then you shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. So when Saul and all Israel heard the words of the Philistine, they was dismayed and greatly afraid. Saul and the rest of the armies was afraid of Goliath. But here come David speaking these things. Who is he? Who is this man? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that should defy the armies of the living God? So when I hear him speaking like this, they go before Saul. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. Now you got to pay attention, because now David is willing to go and fight. But here comes Saul speaking things against the very thing, which is the opposite of faith, by the way. When David is speaking, David is activating faith within the atmosphere, because one, he's changing it. You got to pay attention that he is changing the atmosphere. And David said to Saul, thy servant keep his father's sheep. That's what he's telling him. Thy servant keep his father's sheep. And there came a lion and a bear and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him and smote him and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him. And thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. See, David is speaking faith into the atmosphere. He is speaking things into the atmosphere. He said, just like I killed that lion and that bear, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to smoke him. I'm going to do this to him. He has defied the armies of the living God. David was speaking something that no one else had. David activated and released faith into the atmosphere. That's what David did. So this was different from them. That's why they was like, who is this? Like, why is he speaking? You know what I'm saying? That's why they looking at him like, this little kid, like you put a child. Goliath been out here fighting ever since he's been young, and here you come talking about you can defeat him. But David was speaking, activating his faith, so God can use him. That's how God does it. Because when you speak things into the atmosphere and it is released in the atmosphere, that's how God can work through you. Your faith. That's what God has shown me. It's your faith that releases things. And David said, moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he would deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord will be with thee. See, David has spoke things. He said, just like God delivered me out of the hand of the lion and the bear, he's going to deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine. David was speaking something he was activated. He didn't do what everybody else, but God was using him. It's his faith that activated the presence of the very living God. That's what people don't understand. It was his faith that did it. It was his faith. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put on a helmet of brass upon his head, and also armed him with the coat of mail. Now, David, I went and looked this up because I want to know what this was. I've seen it. Now, I looked up coat of mail. Basically is a breastplate, harness. It's armor is what it is. And David girded his sword upon the armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with thee, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. So I looked that up. So aside is to determine the content and the quality of a metal. It's being to analyze. Prove them is to test by experiment or a standard to show genuineness of. And in Hebrew, is to test, tempt, or try. So David had on Saul's helmet, all of his equipment. Okay. David had all his things on. He had on David's armor, David's helmet, David's coat of mail, Saul's sword, his armor, everything. And that's why David was like, I have not said them to go, and I have not approved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with thee, for I have not proved them. That's why he said that. He couldn't test it because why? It's not David's armor. It's not David's. It's actually was Saul's. That's why David took it off, because he didn't know it. He couldn't test it. He couldn't prove that it was authentic. He didn't know anything about the armor that he had on him. What he did know about is what's to come. Now hold on. And he took it off. So he took his staff. He took his staff in his hand. David had a staff. Because why? David is a shepherd. A shepherd has a staff. David took his staff and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had even a scrip, which a scrip is a traveling pouch, a sling. It's basically like that. It's like a traveling pouch as well. A shepherd's bag, which he had even in the scrip, and he had a sling in his hand, and he drew near the Philistine. So he had a staff, and he had a sling. Because why? That's what David knows. David was a shepherd, overseeing the flock, and destroying the enemies that come near his flock. Don't this sound familiar? And then he goes in with his slingshot, because what? That's what he used to. That's his weapon of choice. That's his weapon. That's his weapon. He couldn't wear Saul's garments, whatever, because for one, he didn't know the content of Saul's thing. He couldn't analyze. He couldn't determine the content of it. He didn't know anything about Saul's equipment. He didn't know anything about it. That's why you got to see it in the spiritual. It's like I heard, what's in your hands? You have to use what's in your hands, what God has given you. You cannot use what's somebody else's. David cannot use Saul's. David had to use his own weapons when going up against Goliath. So that's what he did. He had to use his very own weapons, his weapons of war, his